What a delight to welcome back to 100 Huntley Street and the Crossroads Center, Dr. David Jeremiah. David, it's so good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to be back with you.
Oh, we're just so happy to have you here, and welcome back to Canada and a grand event you're here in town for at Air Canada Center. Congratulations.
Thank you.
To God be the glory for the exposure the ministry's getting and the success and favor God's given.
Well, he's been very good to us.
Well, David, this is the brand new book that you have. Our folks are taking a look at it right now. It's called Agents of the Apocalypse, a riveting look at the key players of the end times. Yeah. Now, before we get into the book, how many books now on Revelation or prophecy have you already written? Because there are a few.
Yeah, they're not. I've only written one other book that's really based on the text of Revelation, but I've written a number of prophetic books that draw deeply from the scriptures there.
When did you first get interested in prophecy? Did you go to prophecy conferences as a kid when they'd have the charts and
you know what?
Those places were
that's
packed
out? That's a really interesting thing because you know my father was a pastor.
Yeah, mine too.
And I don't know if this is the way it was with you, but we used to have these evangelistic crusades in our church twice a year, and on Friday night, every crusade they would have a second coming night or Jesus is coming night. And I would go to those things and sit on the front row, you know, on the edge of the seat and watch it. We had some great guys who would come in. I remember one guy, and I haven't heard anybody mention his name for years. His name was John Carrera.
Yeah.
He was an Italian guy, and boy, could he preach on the second coming. And when you got done, you would think that before the night was over, the roof was going to come off and Jesus would come right down. And I got fascinated by it then.
So that's where it started.
I really started there. You know, until I really settled where I was with the Lord, you know, it used to be more of a discomforting truth than it was anything else.
Yeah.
Then I went to college, and when I was in college at Cedarville, I had a guy there by the name of Bob Gromacki, who was a graduate of Dallas, and he began to teach that. Then, of course, I went to Dallas Seminary, and I had John Walvard and Dwight Pentecost and Charles Ryrie, and all those guys were, you know, the champions of prophetic truth.
Gold standard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in seminary, everything got refined. Then, and then when you went into pastoring, did you find it, people find Revelation so tough? Did you avoid it early on? Did you tackle it early on?
Probably didn't. I really never preached anything straight through the book of Revelation until I moved to California in 1981, and I had been in a church that I had started for 12 years. I preached messages from that, but I felt like when I came to California, maybe it was because I followed Tim LaHaye, I don't know, but when I came to California, I wanted to really get through the book of Revelation, and I preached through the book of Revelation on Sunday nights, and it took me 46 weeks.
Your ministry is Turning Point.
Yeah.
Your church is Shadow Mountain Community Church in San Diego. You did follow Tim LaHaye.
Yes, I did.
And that was within itself an enormous challenge. But preaching 46 weeks through Revelation to me would be an even greater challenge. Somebody who's pastored for years.
Yeah, and you know what, people,
text.
I remember, and this guy you know, he's a friend of mine, and yours too. I won't say his name, but one day I was on an airplane coming back from someplace, and I had the tray table down while people were getting on the plane. I had my Bible out, and this guy walked by. He says, "Hey, Dave, what you up to?" And I said, "I'm studying for my message on Sunday night." He says, "What are you preaching?" And I said, "Revelation." He said, "Revelation?" He said, "That's not relevant." I said, "Well, it's getting more relevant every day." So,
that sounds like our friend.
Yeah,
it does. This book now, let's focus on it. We've got some time together here in various segments. It is about end times. It is about the book of Revelation. You take a different angle here.
Right.
Each chapter, well, actually you profile key players of the Revelation, key groups, and then you introduce each chapter, each group or person with really short stories.
Right.
And it flows beautifully, and then at the end of the chapter, after the characterizations, you have the scripture behind the story.
Yeah, right.
I want to get into that, and we've got lots of time here. What inspired that? Because I thought, what a fresh way to look at Revelation.
Well, you know, I think the first part of it, the guys, you know, the characters, the groups, the 10 people, I believe that you could start in the book of Genesis and preach through the whole Bible and not lose much continuity by just preaching about the people. You start in the book of Adam and Eve, and you just go through the book of Genesis, get in a little trouble in the Psalms and some places like that. But the book of Revelation is just like a lot of other books in the Bible. It's wrapped around people. And there are 10 major people or groups of people in the book of Revelation. And I thought that would be a great way to tell the story. That was the first thing.
You echo, and mentioned this early on in the book, you echo kind of a C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien expressions of the Revelation. Right. They used literature, fiction, if you will, to symbolize biblical truth.
Well, not to give them more credit than they deserve or take any from them, they got the idea from Jesus, because Jesus was the greatest storyteller who ever lived.
Right.
And he would walk into a situation and see something, and immediately a story would flow, like the fig tree or like that. And so he would tell a story to illustrate a deeper spiritual truth. I have in the introduction to the book a quotation from Lewis that goes something like this: if you get a person's imagination, you get their heart.
Right.
And if you just give them information, you get their head. But if you get their head and their heart, now you got them.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been hearing from people who've been reading this book.
So let's move into the early chapters, because the book itself follows the timeline of the biblical revelation.
Right.
You start with it's interesting. You start really with an ancient setting. Mm-hmm. You draw us into the church at Ephesus,
right? And
they're having a congregational meeting,
right?
And some things happen, and there's an interesting person who is there who will follow for the rest of the book of Revelation.
Right.
Can you?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I was trying to figure out. First of all, you find out that John's in exile on the Isle of Patmos, but your heart wants to know, how did he get there? What did he do?
Yeah.
And so we try to create a little front matter for that. How would John have been arrested? What would it have been like? So
it's great.
We do know that he was very critically involved in the early churches there, and so we tried to write this thing where he's in church with his friends, and all of a sudden the Gestapo comes in, and they basically tell everybody they're going to have to bow to Domitian, the emperor, or they're going to be executed. And then they see John, and they go over and basically say, so you're the troublemaker here. You're the guy that's caused all this. And then they tell him that you're not going to be executed. We found something even worse. And we're going to put you on an island, and you're going to be exiled. And so then you follow John to prison, and instead of getting some breadcrumbs that he can eat on the way, he asks for a pen and a parchment. And he stows this away in his clothing, and he gets on the boat, and then they drop him off, and he has to go find a place. And we actually created a pretty riveting video for each of these characters. And the video shows John in a cave, with his pen. And then, of course, as you know, one Sunday he's out, and all of a sudden he has a visitor.
Yeah. And you do this. It's very compelling. It's great writing, and it draws you in very, very quickly. And then you politely finish that segment of the narrative, of the dramatization, and then you transition and you go really hardcore Bible.
Right.
You really hit it hard when it comes to this whole idea of John being at Patmos and outlining then early on the Revelation theme. Can you walk us through the big picture you're trying to introduce us to as the book unfolds and the Revelation teaching begins?
Well, one of the things I wanted to do in the first chapter was to help people understand how this book is constructed, and maybe to deal with some of the questions people have about it. For instance, one of the things you hear people say all the time about Revelation is there's so many symbols in this book, and I don't know what they mean, and so I don't understand the book. And I've said for years that the book of Revelation is the most self-interpreting book in the Bible. More than any other book, when you're reading through Revelation, it will give you a little thing, and then a few verses later it'll say, and the 7 stars are, or the 7, and it'll tell you what they mean. It'll give you the meaning. What other book can you think of that does that? So you shouldn't get intimidated by the symbols. Another thing about symbols that I think is very interesting is that they're time-honored. If John had told his story in terms that we talk today, it would have been lost for all the generations between then and now. But by symbols, it never is lost. For instance, the Antichrist is the beast from the sea. Mm-hmm. The beast from the sea translate to any generation you can ever imagine. Everybody gets a picture from that.
That's right.
So symbolism is a great way to capture truth so that it's not locked in a time capsule. It works for everything. The other thing that's in this book, in the beginning of the book, that I think is really exciting to me is that it's the only book in the Bible where there are two promises that if you read it, you'll be blessed. I don't know of any other book like that. At the beginning of the book, at the end of the book, it says, "Blessed are those who read the words of this book."
In fact, I recall a page where you have the, I think you call it the Beatitudes of Revelation.
Right. Yeah, there's actually, I think, 7 places in the book of Revelation where it says blessed.
I've read the book many times and preached from the book and taught from the book, but I never phrased it that way. I'd never seen it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm, oh my goodness, that's so rich.
Well, you know what? Let me just tell you something really fresh. As we were talking earlier, we just came off a book tour. And so in the last few days, I've met hundreds and hundreds of people. I will never forget this moment. A beautiful African-American lady came up to me 2 days ago, and she had just finished the book. She put her hand in my hand and she said, "Dr. Jeremiah, thank you so much. I'm not afraid anymore." Man, I thought I was going to start crying.
Yeah.
Because that's what the book of Revelation does. If you know how it ends and you know how God is in control, it takes all of the anxiety out of it. You know, I like to say to people, read the book of Revelation, determined to understand it, and it'll settle you down. Yeah. Because it's just incredible that you just see the hand of God in all of this, even in some of the dark places.
Right.
Even in the dark places, he holds out this parenthesis of mercy and grace, and the book is, and we forget sometimes, it is the revelation of Jesus Christ. How can that not be good?